All right, so now we're on to the feet and legs. We're going to go ahead and just isolate these guys, and I think we'll keep these separate from the torso. It'll just be easier to rig. Let's go ahead and swap our make live to this, make sure we have our symmetry on, and we can go ahead and get into quad draw. Now, similar to how I approached the hands, let's start with the boots. The boots are kind of the feet or fingers of this area. So I'm going to start by just blocking in the main functionality of the boot. The way to do that is we start with just kind of a box around this, and you'll realize, our quad modeling approach, one of the reasons why I love to do it and also enjoy teaching it, is it teaches the foundation of topology. So this is essentially the base of our boot, and there is a good chance we could actually use our base mesh to begin with for this. But you're going to have kind of this distinctive front area, and depending on how we want things to go, we might actually, float this just a bit, so that way we have this area we can connect down into here in terms of like a heel area. But yeah, we'll add a center line, because that's going to be nice. And we'll go ahead and pull this forward a bit. You can see Maya is being a little bit wonky with me on this, so I need to kind of play around with that. And then with this boot in particular, we might add in another edge here, but it might look more like this. It depends. Now, I don't want to worry about that yet. Let's get the main functionality of this foot in here first. What's the main functionality? The structure of the shoe. So this front-facing area is going to manifest kind of like this cube structure, but then the side area can come back here. And to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to give it a side volume there. And as we come back, just kind of ease this into it. But we definitely want to converge to a singular back vertice with even spacing between. So for example, right down the middle here, we're going to treat that as our center line. And since we sculpted in this nice detail, we can actually just follow that. But this will give us the rounding of the leg. And we want to think of how many we want going into here. With a leg, we really only need like 6 to 8, going up into here. But there you go, that's kind of the base form. Now, as far as the rest goes, since I am deciding to delineate, this base area here, this probably isn't necessary, but it does kind of give a sense of a plane change, which is why I'm adding it. The plane change being, where it goes from kind of sloped and organic to a little bit more hard surface and connecting down into the base. It just kind of gives a nice little bit of breathing area. And we'll need to finesse that more as we go, but, something like that's okay. And we can figure out how many edges we have going up currently. So that's going to be an important factor. I'm also going to level these out so that they run flat, and we actually have kind of like a little sculpt line there that I can follow, which is pretty nice. I think that came from our higher sub-Ds. And the sculpting process. And if you are just tuning into this video, there's a whole part leading up to how we got here. So feel free to check out the rest of that. It'll be on my channel in a playlist. So let's count these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you add that 9, 10, will give us 10. I think 8's fine though. I might leave it be. Like I mentioned, with feet in particular, we don't need to go crazy here. There's nothing wrong with what we have. I will add edge loop here for some volume. And we have to be mindful that, sometimes when we're adjusting vertices, they go in wonky places. So that went underneath. Let's keep those on the side. And that's going to give us a kind of a functionality of bending the foot, which is going to be helpful. As far as the other areas go, like here, if we want to make sure we have more volume there, but we don't necessarily need it to run into the leg, we can just do this trick again here, where we just weld that over and we use a nice little triangle here. And you'll see in game art, a lot of the times we'll use triangles to just kind of add in detail where it's needed. So we'll go ahead and delete that one, do the same thing here, and I'm actually going to do it on the sides to kind of give this a good deal of rounding. Right here as well. And we don't necessarily need these ones to run all the way across, so we have to decide if we want that or not. It depends. In this instance, it might be completely fine to just kind of smooth this out a little bit more. I also am going to add an edge loop running along here before I get too far ahead of myself. And that will add some more volume to the foot here and give us a little bit better deformation and allow us to kind of round the tip better. Now, this character doesn't have toes or anything, so, we have a little bit more of a budget there than we would on a barefoot character or a creature. So just kind of be mindful of that. Sometimes we can afford to add in some more details for the sake of roundness. Now, as far as the rest of the functionality goes, we can just pull these up with tab here to go straight up the leg. And I am going to need to turn off the kneecap there and isolate these boots. So let me go ahead and hop out of here real quick. I thought I did that already, but apparently I did not. I was pretty sure we isolated that. Anyways, this will give me the functionality going up into here. Now, one thing I did not really think about is that we're not going up into the leg yet. We're going up into this rounded area. But I still think for the leg area, we can probably justify 8 here. You know, with the hands and stuff, that's going to be a lot closer to the camera, more important. With the feet are usually where we save on our polygons when possible. So just keep that in mind as you kind of move down from the character. That's where we start to save. And it depends on the, you know, the type of game you're creating. If it's a top-down game in particular, you're going to really focus that detail on the upper portion and not the bottom. I'll add in about 2 edge loops here, and maybe do some smoothing just to kind of make sure these are rounding out nicely. Other thing I'll want to do is kind of evenly space these where possible. That way we can get a really nice circle here. And then coming into the bottom here, we're just going to start connecting these across. Now we want to connect them across this way with a middle line. The middle line is basically there to just kind of help with UV symmetry if we need it. We could also delete the middle line, potentially, if we don't put any cuts. And depending on how things go when we create our game mesh, we could also possibly just get rid of it too. Don't be afraid of triangles here. The main structures we need on a foot are running across. We don't really need them anywhere else. And in this instance, we actually can connect that straight across, which made me quite happy there. That's going to be nice. And we don't really need much volume on the base of the feet. As a matter of fact, you can also kind of merge areas where there's not going to be bending. It just kind of depends on where there is and isn't bending in your foot and the kind of rig you're going to do. So usually, you know, we bend on the toe. That would be like this area back here. So that edge would matter. But this next edge might not so much. And even going into the end cap here. So these are areas where I could be like, okay, well, maybe we weld that down to save a vertex, right? Or maybe even weld this all the way back to here, where the toe is going to bend to save a vertex. It kind of depends on how we want to animate that bend. Usually the bends there are just kind of straight on there, so something like that could be fine. Just kind of depends on what you want. Now, I also tend to like to try and make triangles where possible, so you can see how that area kind of quadded out. There's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes game engines interpret it a little bit weird, so I like to do that. Now, we can basically just proceed up the leg here, just like we did for our hand in the previous demo here, and start consuming our whole leg, which is kind of our goal, right? So similar to how I did the hand, I am going to kind of catch on this ledge. Now, this ledge is not a material transition from hard to soft, so if it's a little bit muddy here in the topology and we don't have that perfect angle, that's fine. The normal map's going to basically compensate for that and give us a beautiful result regardless. So, yay normal maps, making it so we can be a little bit lazy with our geometry. And still have a really pretty end result. All right. So we're going to bring that up. Similar to how I did the hand, I'm probably going to take this all the way to the top. You can see how we have a clear divot in the middle there. I'm going to add a edge loop, but I'm going to just do it after the fact to make sure we get all the way up the top here. Now, one of the things we don't need to do here is we don't need to do a reduction. With the hands, because you have the phalanges there, the fingers, a reduction's needed to make sure that you don't have copious amounts of edges running up into the arm and into the rest of the body. With the boot, since we don't have individual toes, we just have toe, basically, we don't need to worry about that. So I can go ahead and add an edge loop here to kind of help with that silhouette. And then as far as this goes, basically bump these up into the leg area here to the best of my abilities. Once again, you know, we're going to go kind of to that transition area. And we'll have to see how some of this bakes. A lot of doing game art is just guessing that it's going to work. you don't know till you bake. And usually in the texture process, before I move forward, I do a test bake in something like Maya. Like there, that's all kind of weird feeling. I don't know exactly how that's going to turn out. But hey, once we're there, we can just go ahead and start pulling this up and getting this up and forming the pant leg. As far as this goes, similar to how I did the arm, I'd rather connect this all the way up before worrying about, individual loops for kind of the knee or anything like that. For this character style particularly, for a standard human character, I might worry about the knee structure a little bit more. With this character's style, not so much, because he doesn't really have knees. So the most important thing is just that it looks like it's bending. And that's the nice thing about, doing this style character, kind of the old school video game character. You don't need to worry too much. So that should work for the knee, and this will just kind of be an extra one to help with the form. I think that should be all we need here. And then we're ready to get into the torso. Now, the torso portion of the pants is basically like underwear or like a diaper, if you will. What we do is we go ahead and just kind of block that in. What we'll have here is our center area, and this is going to kind of tuck underneath here, like so. I'll go to the middle, connect to the front, and then connect up. And that's pretty much it. From there, this can connect up here. We don't need to go crazy with it in the front. I kind of went crazy with it in the back, so it kind of depends on where we want this to go. But even something like that is going to be perfectly fine. We do generally want it to run along the sides, though, at a point. So, for example, maybe this connects in the crotch area, but then, we have this pole here, and then we connect those across there. There's other approaches you can take, too. The legs kind of have two different approaches. You can have the edge loop follow along this way, which is okay if you have your legs kind of go out like that. Or you can use a pole to basically have it go like this, which also works fine. Either of these kind of work, and this side-to-side one, the one nice thing here is it's a little bit easier when the legs are coming out. And the thing is, for things like walking, our legs basically go in and out. They don't go to the side necessarily. So I do find that using more of a flat line across the top actually tends to deform a little bit better in my experience. But everyone has kind of different approaches and opinions on this, if I'm going to be completely honest. There's probably one right way, one definitive way out there. I have yet to see it, though, established as the way. But something like that, can work. And then from here, it's just a matter of basically pulling these up to finish this and giving it, enough support geometry. Now, this also depends on how anatomically, sculpted this area is on the character. If you had individual muscles or fat forms or structures like buttocks and that kind of thing, you might want to follow the forms a little bit more, especially if you're going to implement anything like jiggle filters or muscle simulations. We're not, so something like this works out kind of nice. And we just need to make sure we have enough support edges here to support that bend along the leg, if we do choose to have that there. So just be mindful of that. The one nice thing about the angular approach is it kind of forces you to put the edges in there. This way does not. Also, I'm kind of losing the center line there on my smoothing, so I'm going to backpedal here just a smidge so I don't smooth that center line out as much. I guess we're going to lose it no matter what if I don't manually readjust. So, well, manually readjust there, manually readjust and get that in place. So just going to be mindful, there's a couple different approaches you can use there, and the more characters you do, the more you'll understand that. Also, the more different types of characters you do, you'll understand when to use one versus the other. So just take some time finessing this. I'm going to try and give these decent spacing here to make sure I have the results I want. And I think with the legs we're okay. They're a little bit dense, but this character doesn't have a whole lot going on, so I think we can warrant the additional density there without needing to worry. And just kind of keep fine-tuning this until we get what we want. All right, cool. So something like that, I think is okay for the legs. What I'm going to do here is on this top area here, I'm just going to fill this in like we did before. I'll do a mesh fill hole here. And then just like we did previously, I'll do an edit mesh poke. And what's interesting here is you might be asking, why am I adding more geometry? And the answer is I'm actually reducing it. Each of these unconnected vertices basically counts as 2 vertices, and by merging them to a center one here, you actually make it have less. Now, you can't see that inside of Maya, but it's how the game engine calculates it, and that's one of the really weird things. But that should give me a good enough result there for the pants. Let me go and see how this is all looking in game mesh form, retopology form. Looking pretty good. We still have the shoulders and kneecaps to get in here, so let's go ahead and get working on those. Let's finish up the kneecaps real quick since they're part of the pant system. I'll just go ahead and use a make live on these, and you might want to isolate them first to make our life a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and do that, make live here. And then on these ones, this one's kind of weird because you're going to want to basically find a center line if you can. You don't need to on these because they're not perfectly symmetrical, which is, to an extent, unfortunate. Obviously we can mirror these, but if they were perfectly symmetrical, we could just cut this in half. So my bad on that in terms of planning, but honestly, we wouldn't want these to be perfectly symmetrical anyway. And I might even give these their own individual UVs to make sure that they're not perfectly symmetrical either, which is funny to think. And I'm just kind of connecting the important center lines here that allow me to form this central quad area, like so. And then we can add in some edge loops across. And we'll just kind of add them evenly into the center area here until we get what we want. So something like that's probably okay in terms of silhouette. If we wanted more than that, we could add more. At this point, what I might do is add 1 edge loop here and just come in here with soft select and smooth this aggressively, in which case that edge loop's not really helping us. So something like this structure, though, I think's fine. This isn't perfectly, round. It's kind of dinged up, uneven. So I don't think we need more than this. You could also consider, converging some of these. For example, there's no reason why we couldn't come in here and just kind of have this be a central point. Those center lines, they might add some roundness here in terms of like a radial structure. But something like this, might actually give us a better form. And then what we could do is we could smooth this, and we could consider adding like another edge loop here, which would give us more structure going that way, rather than having all those quads in there. So this would probably be, a better result, kind of this spider web look. And then as far as this goes, we do have kind of a little backside bevel. So I am going to work that backside bevel into here to get this nice and aligned with that base area as much as I can. And then similar to what we've done previously on the backside here, we can pretty much just do our fill hole poke approach. Depending. Kind of depends on how this looks initially and how far back we're going to let this go. So I need to kind of take a look at where this ledge falls and play around with this. These kneecaps in particular are a little bit muddy and not well defined. So what I'm doing at this point is kind of finding that ledge and seeing if I can't pull these back. And we do need to, at some point, step out and take a look at this in silhouette mode so you kind of read where that's going. I mainly want our ledge here to meet up. And then these ones here, I feel like they're going in here a bit aggressively. Let's not go too deep in here. Kind of maintain our spacing. And that looks pretty good. And I don't know if we can just fill hole those back. We might need to add in at least 1 ring and then fill hole. So I might go ahead and do that here. Just kind of bring in this here, and then we can do a fill hole poke. On this one, though, we could also perform a reduction pass, since we're not really going to see these. The main reason I care about these is to get kind of an additional little ledge before this ledge terminates. So we could basically find our center line, because we don't want to disturb it here to here, And then everything that's not the center line here, we could kind of merge together. And in this case, I probably don't even need to bother with a fill hole. What I would do is just connect that across. And you can see how that's going to give us essentially these lines running into here and connect nicely into that center point. And that might even be a better approach than we have on the front, but I think the front there gives us a little bit more character. We could, at this point, consider converging these two as well. I might wait till after the bake, though. So I want to show you this here that this can be done, but I'm going to wait till after the bake because this extra ledge might be needed. But that will give us our knees. So let's just double check these all together now. We still need to finish off the torso there and get the shoulders in here, but you can see how our game mesh is coming together and we're getting a good result. So let's go ahead and take a look at the shoulder and the head to kind of finish this off, and then we'll be good with our retopology. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can catch the next video in the series when it goes live.